Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 435 chainsaw. The customer complaint is that it won't start. As with all my repairs on running issues, I always look in the fuel tank first. I want to know what the customer has been burning for fuel. I want to know what that filter looks like. I want to know if there's any water in the bottom of the tank. And while I've got the filter hanging out here for inspection, I'm going to pressure test the fuel line. This will tell me if the carburetor is tight or if there's a hole in the fuel line. And in this case, it holds 10 pounds of pressure and it's not settling on the gauge. The filter looks to be in decent shape. We're just going to tuck all this back away. All right. The next thing I like to do on all my repairs is just take a look inside the cylinder. I mean, I'm not going to move forward on a repair on a 435 if it's got a scored cylinder. It's pretty much going to be done. So we're going to inspect this and just make sure. Too many times in the past, I've gone ahead and started making repairs, whether it be bar, chain, clutch drum, whatever. The spark plug looks all right. Little use. And then I have to backtrack and recover all my parts that I put on because the saw is roached and the customer doesn't want to pay to fix it. In this case, the cylinder looks good. I'm going to lay the spark plug on the cylinder and pull the cord and see if we got spark. Just hold the plug, dude. There we go. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I do have spark. That looked to be like a pretty good blue spark. So we'll run this plug back in, torque it down to spec. Air filter looks pretty good. We're going to put that back on. And then we'll just see if we can get it started. I mean, all the basics are covered here. It seems to be priming decent. Customer complains he can't get it started though. Alright, I already know what the problem is because I do this every day and I see it all the time. And there's a lot of you watching that already know what the problem is. There's also a lot of you watching that are guessing that it's some kind of fuel related problem. And it's not. It's not. It might be slightly flooded, but that's not why it won't start. We did have spark, but just having spark isn't enough. It needs to be timed spark. It needs to be consistent spark. It needs to be strong spark. Laying the spark plug on the cylinder really doesn't tell you that you have good spark. The only thing it'll tell you is that you don't not have spark. So it would be one thing you could theoretically cross off the list, or a direction to move to, I should say, if you lay the spark plug on the cylinder and you pull a cord and you have no spark, you know to look in the ignition system. But just because you do have spark doesn't mean you're good to go. So one reason you might not have consistent spark is if you had a bad ground. So right now I'm zeroing my meter. Basically I'm just putting the two prongs together and seeing where the gauge settles. 0.3 ohms. That's the resistance I have in my leads. Now I'm going to go from the laminations of the coil to the engine block, the cylinder, something. And if I have a perfect connection, it's going to say 0.3. So there's a bit of resistance there. I had 1.1 ohms. And there is some room for resistance, like 0.2 ohms. but not 1.1 ohms. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and clean up the ground between the ignition coil, laminations, and the cylinder where it's mounted. And all I'm doing for that right now is just breaking the screws loose and torquing them back down and seeing if we can get a better ground than that 1.1 ohms of resistance. Just checking my gap. The gap should be 0.3 millimeters. Now this process is the same for most chainsaws. But just because this is a 435 homeowner saw or farmer rancher grade saw, it doesn't mean you don't do the same thing on a 592 or similar. Now I'm checking the ground between the laminations and the cylinder, and we have 0.6, 0.5. If you take the 0.3 that I had resistance in my leads and subtract it from 0.5, you have 0.2 ohms resistance, which is acceptable. Now, does that mean the saw is going to run? Not necessarily, but we do know that we have a good ground now. And there's one more thing to check off the list, right? There was a time when Echo had a problem with techs sending good coils back for warranty claims when, in fact, they just had bad grounds. And they put out a service bulletin on how to do this procedure. So now we got two problems. It still doesn't start, and the rope is jacked up. What we found was that we did have a bad ground, and we also found that fixing that ground didn't make a dang bit of difference. That doesn't mean it's a step you should skip. It's still an important part of the process, because sometimes just fixing that ground does fix the problem. Electricity needs a path to follow to complete a circuit, and that ground is part of that path. The spark won't jump the gap if it can't jump to a ground that is connected to the coil. So because we have a good ground and it still doesn't run, and I'm certain this is an ignition problem, not a fuel problem, I'm going to try and replace the coil. Now, we really didn't do anything that would say, yes, 100%, this is the coil. I'm just doing this based on experience. When you pull on the cord and you get that where it kind of wants to run but doesn't, here's your part number for the new coil on the 435. It's typically a coil. Let's lay it in here. Get our wires sorted out. We got an eyelet for the ground wire that goes to the stop switch. That's the black wire in this case. And we'll get this air gap set on here as well. .3 millimeters. If you rotate the magnet of the flywheel up to the coil with the gauge in between there, the coil should snap right up to the magnet against the gauge. Then you just tighten the screws down. I know all of this installation of a coil is pretty basic stuff, but paying attention to the way that saw sounded when it wouldn't start, and being able to identify that that is a coil problem on a Husqvarna, not a fuel problem. I mean, that's the key to this video right here. This is our air conductor. We're just going to clean this up a little bit. I recently found out from one of the commenters in a video that the Swedish translation for this might not really be air conductor. By golly, I can't remember what he told me it was, though. All right, the blue wire also goes to the kill switch, and then it goes to the coil. So when you hit the kill switch, you're completing a ground from the engine to the tab on the coil. I must have had that starter screwed on there on an angle, or I had that air conductor wedged in there wrong or something that got that, made that rope hang out. But we're going to try this again, and if it does start, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 435 that wouldn't start because it needed an ignition coil. Thanks for watching. Later.